Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're really diving into a monumental period that fundamentally reshaped the 20th century, World War I.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've poured through a pretty compelling stack of sources to pull out those essential insights and help you understand not just what happened, but, why it mattered so deeply.
It's such a foundational moment, isn't it?
Mm.
Influencing everything from global politics to, well, societal attitudes for decades
Yeah,
afterwards.
right.
Our deep dive today, we're going to explore what this Great War truly represented, why the peace treaties that followed were so uniquely punitive, and what the implications were for the defeated nations, especially Germany.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. The sources don't just call World War I the first great international conflict of the 20th century, which it was, of course,
Yeah.
but they dig into its psychological and political aftershocks, tracing how it kind of chillingly paved the way for things like the Holocaust later on. This was clearly much more than just another war, wasn't it?
Well, absolutely. What's really striking is how this conflict is immediately tied into a larger story of, well, profound trauma and lasting consequence. It didn't just wrap up neatly in 1918.
Yeah.
Its divisive peace, as the sources put it, would echo in the decades to come, giving rise to a Second World War and genocide. It undeniably represented a turning point. It shaped leaders, ordinary people, partly through the sources mentioned, the brutalization of society.
So to really grasp the sheer scale of WWI, our sources take us back first to that seemingly isolated event that kicked it all off, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie in Sarajevo, June 28, 1914.
Right.
And then fighting starts in August, and it just spirals incredibly quickly into 4 years of global conflict.
And what's often overlooked, I think, is the initial widespread enthusiasm on all sides. There was this shared confidence in a quick and decisive victory.
Yeah, I saw that.
If you look at the bigger picture, it just highlights this profound collective miscalculation of what modern industrialized warfare would actually mean.
And that optimism, well, it vanished pretty quickly, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The conflict just devolved into this horrible stalemate of costly battles and trench warfare, especially on the Western Front in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, can you even imagine a system of trenches and fortifications stretching for some 475 miles
Yeah.
from the North Sea down to the Swiss border?
Yeah.
That was the reality for most soldiers there.
And it's really crucial to understand the sheer scale of the fighting. Okay, so trench warfare defined the Western Front, that static line.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eastern Front, it was huge, over 1,000 miles across open plains. So you couldn't have the same kind of entrenched system. It was more fluid, a war of movement, but just as devastating.
Right.
And it really earned the name World War because it wasn't just Europe. Fighting broke out in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, the Pacific Islands, at sea, and for the first time ever, in the air.
Yeah, that aerial dimension is fascinating. Now, I was particularly struck by how the sources described the shift, the momentum change around 1917. What things, maybe beyond the obvious, really created that decisive change, especially with the U.S. declaring war on Germany in April?
Well, that shift had a few parts to it. The U.S. entry, yeah, that was huge, mostly spurred by Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, where their U-boats sank any ship, military or civilian, no warning,
Right. Very controversial.
hugely. And also Germany's pretty audacious attempt to ally with Mexico against the U.S. So America brought this flood of fresh troops and material.
Okay.
That, plus the ever-tightening blockade of German ports, definitely started to tip the scales.
Yeah.
But this new Allied advantage was initially, well, complicated by dramatic stuff happening on the Eastern Front.
Ah, yes, the Russian Revolution. 1917, Russia, a key Allied power, just gets engulfed by two revolutions. One knocks over the Tsar, the second brings the Bolsheviks to power. Reading about it, it's so clear how Russia's internal chaos just rippled outwards.
It absolutely did. This upheaval kicked off a brutal and enduring civil war in lands formerly ruled by Russia. And critically for the wider war, the new Bolshevik leadership, really desperate to consolidate their power, decided to make a separate peace with the Central Powers.
Which leads us to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, March 3rd, 1918. And the sources are really explicit about how punitive, how harsh this treaty was for Russia. They had to give up claims to Finland, Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, huge chunks of Polish and Lithuanian territory.
Yeah.
It's an early, stark example of these really tough treaties that would kind of define the end of the war.
And that treaty, Brest-Litovsk, it had a major strategic effect. It freed Germany up to move all its forces to the Western Front.
Oh, okay.
And by late July 1918, they pushed to within 50 miles of Paris. I mean, for a moment there, it really looked like victory might be within their grasp.
But that moment didn't last long. By August, you've got 2 million American troops reinforcing the Allies, and the German offensive is stopped cold. Then comes what the sources called the 100 Days Offensive, this relentless Allied pushback.
And this dramatic turnaround directly leads to the collapse and surrender of the Central Powers.
Yeah.
You have Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire giving up in September and October,
Right.
then Austria-Hungary in early November. And crucially, by late September, Germany's own top military leaders told Kaiser Wilhelm II the stark truth. The war was lost. They needed to seek an armistice immediately.
And the news that Germany was suing for peace, it apparently hit the German people like a bombshell. They'd largely been kept in the dark about how bad things were.
Exactly.
So this led to widespread disaffection with the government, even mutiny. Then November 9th, 1918, right in the middle of all this unrest, the Kaiser's abdication is announced and a German republic is proclaimed.
This whole dramatic internal collapse really sets the stage for the armistice. Just 2 days later, a German delegation meets the victorious Allies, led by French Field Marshal Foch, in that famous rail car in Compiègne Forest. And they accept the armistice terms.
So thinking back to Brest-Litovsk, how did these armistice terms for Germany sort of foreshadow the really punitive peace that followed? The sources seem pretty clear on this connection.
They are very clear. The harshness of the terms of the armistice itself, it directly portended the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. It wasn't just stop shooting.
No.
These terms included Allied occupation of Germany's Rhineland, surrendering the entire German fleet, keeping the naval blockade going.
Yeah.
It was all designed to strip Germany of any ability to keep fighting or, crucially, to quickly rebuild its military strength.
So a clear demonstration of dominance.
Absolutely. It was meant to prevent quick comeback and really lay the groundwork for the comprehensive and very challenging peace treaty that was coming.
So November 11th, 1918, 11 a.m. The guns on the Western Front finally stop. The Great War, as people called it then, was over. But the cost, human and material, it's almost beyond comprehension. The sources call it one of the most destructive wars in history.
The numbers are just, well, staggering, frankly. More than 8.5 million soldiers died. That figure alone is more than all the military deaths in European wars for the entire 19th century combined.
Wow.
And then add another 21 million men wounded, many with injuries that would change their lives forever. It's almost impossible to picture that scale of loss. Whole generations just decimated.
And what makes these huge losses even starker, according to our sources, is this clash between new technology and old tactics. You have new weapons like long-range artillery, tanks, poison gas, airplanes revolutionizing the battlefield.
Yeah.
But many military leaders tragically failed, it seems, to adjust their strategies to this increasingly mechanized nature of warfare.
And this tragic disconnect, it led to this brutal policy of attrition, especially on the Western Front. The goal essentially became just to grind down the enemy's manpower and resources, even if it meant huge losses for your own side, rather than aiming for decisive victories.
Like the Somme.
Exactly. Think of the Somme. The British Army suffered over 57,000 casualties, killed, wounded, missing on one single day. July 1st, 1916. Germany and Russia had the highest numbers of military deaths overall, and France lost something like 16% of all the men it mobilized. Just staggering.
And the impact wasn't just on the soldiers. Civilian losses were absolutely catastrophic. The sources point to as many as 13 million non-combatants dying from starvation, disease, direct military action, massacres. It paints this picture of a widespread societal collapse, not just war. Did the sources get into the sort of psychological or long-term social scars from that level of civilian suffering?
Well, these specific sources don't delve too deeply into the psychological scars, but they absolutely underscore the sheer breadth of the suffering. And tragically, death rates for everyone, military and civilian, spiked even higher right at the war's end because of the devastating Spanish flu pandemic, which was made much worse by the war's conditions.
Right, the movement of troops and weakened populations.
Exactly.
And beyond the immense human toll, the material destruction was huge too. Property, industry, losses were devastating, especially in France and Belgium, where the fighting had been the heaviest for so long. Millions were forced from their homes, displaced. It really shows the just comprehensive nature of the destruction.
Yeah, total war.
So wrapping this up for our listeners, what does it all mean? World War I wasn't just a conflict, it was a genuine cataclysm. It fundamentally reshaped the world map, ushered in an era of unprecedented destruction, and, as our sources point out, chillingly set the stage for future global conflicts, even genocides.
Yeah, we've tracked it from that early, completely misguided optimism through to a brutal, grinding, truly global war. We've also seen how those armistice terms, with their really punitive measures like occupying the Rhineland, taking the fleet, how they directly reflected the immense cost the victors had paid, and their stark determination to stop Germany from quickly bouncing back.
It's a powerful and pretty sobering reminder of how interconnected history is, isn't it? The trauma, the terms of peace from one conflict, they really did reverberate for generations.
And that really prompts a critical question, I think. If the peace hammered out after World War I was so divisive and arguably contributed to future disasters, what does that tell us about the immense challenge, the very delicate balance needed when trying to make peace after such profound global trauma?
It's a huge question. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you some compelling new insights, maybe some surprising facts, and a clearer picture of this really pivotal, transformative moment in history.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Great War. And as always, keep that curiosity ignited.